But without further ado, let's get underway as we are going to be starting the day with Serral versus Puppy Paw. Now, Puppy Paw has been trekking his way up the leaderboard seemingly out of nowhere, folks. Puppy Paw, for those who haven't seen, has breached the top 30 now, sitting at 1700 ELO rating exactly in 29th position with a 63% win rate across 107 games. So this guy definitely has some potential, definitely has some skill. I've got a feeling this is probably a Smurf. My basis for that is I checked the profile. There's really no details. Everything is hidden. No name changes, nothing. It really suggests that this is a very recent creation, and it's probably one of the high-level players just duking it out on a Smurf. If anyone has tuned into the stream and seen which Smurf, you know, who this Smurf belongs to, which high-level player is, definitely let me know in the comments. I always love to know. I'm trying to start to compile a list so we can keep track to some degree of the Smurfs coming up so we know who's facing who. But the person who's not Smurfing is ironically in the blue here. It is, of course, Serral. He's once again on those Rus. He does seem to play a lot of Rus. I would say it's his primary faction at the stage, and he's got quite efficient and proficient at it. But he's going to be up against the Mongols, so definitely some rush potential. Of course, the patch has just dropped, so there is a lot of tweaks that have come out. So expect to see some deviations, some changes. I don't feel like the patch changed too much in the grand scheme of things with Age of Empires 4 and its current meta. I think the meta will evolve again, but it will just be simply off the basis of people, once again, just tapping into new civs and discovering new things. And I think that was something that the devs clearly were a little bit paranoid about, and probably why we didn't get the big changes that a lot of people were expecting around, for example, Delhi. Because Delhi, in a lot of ways, I think what happened with that is people started to discover really kind of busted elements about it, especially depending on seed generation and map type, right? Especially if you get those early sacred sites. And I think that, more than anything, kind of led to the devs probably making the decision to not alter Delhi too much right now, and in terms of balancing civs overall, maybe not touch the civs as much as just touch the general game. Because of course we saw things like the spearmans, they got changes to the bonus damage they do cavalry, for example. Same with crossbows. And then we also saw the nerfs to horseman health, which is why I do expect the horseman meta to start to die off. I think a lot of people were really prioritizing the springman meta, and they kind of were sleeping on how powerful the horsemen themselves were becoming. We were seeing it plenty of times in late game situations. So I don't really expect to see too many horsemen outside of early counters to archers. We'll have to see if it comes up in this game, as the first game we're watching on the new patch. I don't expect it just because in this type of matchup, the Rus player could easily have knights and his archers as his composite force, so you, the Mongol player, are less likely to build horsemen. And I just don't really see Rus players building horsemen. I think with the economy benefits you get out of the Golden Gate, which Serral is now getting into right now, it's just too easy to go for knights if you really need some aggression early on, or just save up and go for a castle age timing in which you skip horsemen and you're straight into a different type of horse unit, which of course is the horse archers. So opening-wise, we have seen the hunting cabin go down. Apparently there are some weird kind of wonky interaction with hunting cabins right now, but they did at least fix one to do with income on the gold front, right? Where you could essentially, I think it was you could delete the hunting cabins, build them again, and then you once again get this gold value, and it would start to just continue to add up on the gold front. I'm not sure if I've explained that 100% correctly. I just know that there was an exploit that allowed you to get a ridiculous amount of gold from hunting cabins that has been resolved now. So early on vision game, looks like they've both are about to have eyeballs on. Yeah, you'll see the sneak in. So Serral actually gets vision of this going up as well. In terms of his bounty score right now, Serral's sitting at 240, so just needs a little bit more to hit that threshold. He could club down sheep right now. I definitely would advise it. You're missing out on that extra 5% gather rate, and it does, you know, it's definitely worth taking the time from a villager to club down a sheep or two. An early wooden fortress course going down. This type of map isn't that great for the Rus, by the way. We've seen other players suffer a little bit from this. It's the fact that there's not much in the way of wood available initially at your spawn, right? And the reason this is a problem is because this wooden fortress investment, it costs 175, but you aren't going to feel the true value of the returns. Yes, don't get me wrong, by the time you kill all this wood, it's going to be, you know, the extra 75 and more back. But of course, that's delayed. So really, when you think of wooden fortresses and their placements, think of them as a long-term investment, right? You not only want to get back what you put into it in terms of cost across this amount of trees, you then want to get a lot more value moving forward. Because usually the cool thing about wooden fortresses is you can daisy chain the lumber camp. So you can place another lumber camp within range of this lumber camp, and it'll extend the influence to keep giving that 20%. And that's where the value really comes. And we already talked before about how frustrating it can be as Rus because this wooden fortress is such a big investment early on. That being said, Serral has been able to get into it early, which means he's going to have a very defended economy, and it does suggest exactly this, that he's looking to be present in feudal. So we're not going to see a Castle Age rush, necessarily, and instead it's going to be the early knights coming out from Serral. I like this play. I think the move of just going straight into castle has become kind of predictable, and a good Mongol player hits his timings in such a way that he can actually punish you and shut you out of the game completely. We've seen it before, but it does create this kind of thin gap through which a Mongol player in this situation will be able to win the game. This, however, will cause a lot more pressure on the Mongol player. And remember, one of the weaknesses of the Mongols is that they tend to have fairly exposed economies, and probably will quite quickly after the initial wood line is gone, right? Because it's going to expand somewhere. You can already see that with the gold vein at the back of his base. Serral did get up to the 300 bounty, so he did unlock the second one. I don't really expect him to get the tier 3. By the way, just once again, I'm going to reiterate how happy I am that they changed the sizings on all these icons. They are so nice now. Maybe in some cases a little bit too small, but for the most, I'm happy with this change. I'd rather have them be slightly too small than overwhelmingly too big, which is what the icons on the minimap were before. It made it very hard to see when people were doing things like landmarks. It made it very hard to see where exactly certain resources were. I actually personally would prefer the landmark symbol to be bigger, slightly bigger maybe, but I don't know if that would just kind of be overwhelming on the eyes on the minimap in that situation compared to everything else. Definitely have to squint your eyes somewhat when you want to see small units moving around now, right? Like, this hunting cabin being built here is a very small icon. Which, by the way, hunting cabin is going to be complete. He probably loses the villager because it is a hardened Khan, but it's definitely worth it just to get this hunting cabin down. I really love to see that Serral is engaging with this. Not enough players do this, in my opinion. It's 28 gold per minute that he's now unlocking, right? At 6 minutes in, this is going to pay for itself and more. Yes, the hunting cabins are quite pricey at the 100 wood mark, but of course, there should be plenty of wood in most of these maps. It's gold is the limiting factor. I will say that wood will become slightly limiting soon, of course, because as we mentioned, it's this small pocket he only has here. And the thing that I don't know if Serral has actually scouted to the fullest. Yeah, so he knows how limited on the wood he is. But he's choosing the gold either way. So that should kind of show you how much of a prioritization this can be. An early knight is out and about. Already took some damage. I think that was most of the Khan. And he did place another hunting cabin. Just a really big priority here. I feel like I rarely ever see Roost players bother this at all. I will say in this matchup, it is a risky endeavor for Serral to choose to place all of these hunt cabins. Because remember what he's up against, folks. He's up against a Mongol player. So if the Mongol player scouts these out and starts sniping these down, that's going to be 50 food and 50 gold given to your opponent. Having said that, if you keep these hunting cabins up for 4 minutes, they pay back the resource and they trade wood for gold, essentially. And it kind of evens out. If you get up to the 8-minute mark, you don't actually mind losing it, even if your opponent is getting some resources, because you would have got beneficial value out of it, right? You would have made the equal amount where you've essentially got, you know, you return your investment in 4 minutes, then you gain what the Mongol would in the next 4 minutes, sort of thing. But hello. Poppy Boy. He has been building up the archer army. We haven't been prioritizing too much what he's been doing, right? We've been looking a lot at what Serral's been doing as an opening. But actually, if you look, Poppy, he's amassed quite the army of archers, backing up some spearmen, now knowing his opponent has knights. And he's moving the Deerstone across map. Look how slow the Deerstone moves, though. 0.75. It's going to take a while to get there. But he will continue to amass force in the meantime, even doubling up on his spear production rates. And this is going to be important because the weakness of the Rus is this situation, right? Where if you did go knights, you can't churn them out as quickly. And instead, Serral, look what he's doing right now. He's going for the Abbey of the Trinity. And this move is so delayed because, look, Deerstone is all the way back here. He could pressure in somewhat, but he's not going to be quick enough to pressure Serral and prevent him from getting Castle Age. And that's a big deal, folks. And in some ways, a deal breaker. You can already see the infrastructure going down. It's going to be a triple archer range drop, so it is going to be the horse archers. And they will just rip straight through these archers and spearmen. This move by Puppy Paw feels way too late. And he gets the notification. Will he continue in? I feel like he's just kind of fully invested now, right? He's going to build the second battering ram. You don't have a choice but to go at this stage. And you have a very fine window to strike in. You can already see the production starting to kick up. It's actually going to be normie archers out of Serral, though, so he's not looking to get greedy with the horse archers. Understandable to an extent, right? When you think about the fact that horse archers have close to the same health of the archers, but they do cost more, noticeably more. 80-40 compared to the 30-50. So you will get more bang for buck. I believe they produce faster as well. Yeah, 15 compared to the 22. So this will allow him to get a counter force in place quick enough to buffer his opponent out of his base. Knight, in the meantime, charging in onto the Khan. I Okay, I don't know what happened there, folks. Unless he accidentally over-microed that and clicked again. He didn't get the charge buff, which would have killed the Khan, but would have done a lot of additional damage. So they'll back off the wood line. Most of this wood line is gone now, so it's not the biggest loss to Serral. However, he will feel the loss somewhat, considering that he now doesn't have access to wood and is going to need it to produce more archers. So this is where the trade should come into fruition. He really needs to start engaging with that golden gate where he can. And he's getting a little bit of gold income to support that. Has moved across this wood line in the meantime. Battering Rams moving in onto the wooden fortress. Villagers burn this down quick. Remember, the Battering Rams did get nerfed. 200 health less. And they definitely feel the pain when you engage with melee. As you see right there, the strikes out from the villagers are good. But several villagers lost for Serral. Wooden Fortress down to half HP as it currently stands. And well, Battering Ram not going to be standing for much longer. Meanwhile, Archers still cleaning this up. The Knights moving in as well. And Puppy Paw having to prioritize the Knights means that the Archers are running him through. And with the Battering Ram out of range, it means that now the Wooden Fortress can focus on the squishy targets. Villagers, though, they are far out. And this is going to be the costly part. You are going to lose a lot of your eco, right? When you look at this situation now, down to 21 villagers for Serral. Compare that now to Puppy Paw at 37. He might not end the game here, but he gives himself a big one-up at this stage. Now Serral is going to have to find a way to rectify this. I wonder if the play is to try and go for a second TC. I feel like you're going to need to boom up quickly, right? And that's kind of the concerning situation you have right now. Is Puppy, he could just sit back. He could just look to castle up himself because, of course, he's lagging behind that regard. Or he could continue to pressure up. I think his play here is to continue to pressure up. I think if he backs off long enough to tech up, he probably gives some breathing room that allows Serral to go for a secondary TC. And then you just worry that Serral's going to boost back into this. And in a Castle Age matchup, with the way these two have opened, I do give a slight edge to the Roost player in this engagement, right? That's not to say that Lancers from the Mongols can't compare, especially with Deerstone. But I think you'll put yourself in a situation where, by the time you're engaging, Serral has surplus resources to push out a vast army, or he's already halfway to Imperial Age, and that's scary either way for the Mongol player. So there we go. There's that sieging effect we talked about. So he gets to do the raid. More Battering Rams being built as well. Continues to trickle, and Serral just continue to keep the archer production going. Really, if Puppy wants to win this, he needs to expose and kill off this wood line. This is the only wood that Serral has access to. If you take this out of the equation, it ends the game. Deerstone just making itself juicy again as more troops come in. I don't think Puppy Paw has scouted this recently is the concerning part, right? And he won't for the next minute or so, because remember, the Khan did get killed in that last fight. So he doesn't have the additional vision. So he doesn't actually know what's back here, and that's unfortunate. This is where outposts can be valuable in this situation, especially when you're up against just archers, like Serral could suffer in that regard. But didn't want to bring his villagers across. So Battering Ram moves in. Now Serral, kind of problematic, right? Because he took such a hit to the villager count in that last assault, it's going to be very hard for him to use these villagers to get rid of this Battering Ram. So he's going to have to sacrifice a few buildings. He identifies that. He's already giving me the lumber camp. That doesn't matter anymore. Hunting cabin is going to suck a bit because it means you're going to lose that 18 gold per minute. But once again, it's not worth sacrificing those villagers. So expect Serral to hold out all the way until the wooden fortress. The wooden fortress is probably where he starts defending because that's the thing that he doesn't want to sacrifice. Archers. Archer count definitely in Serral's favor right now, so he can engage this. Spearman chasing in. They do get on top of the archers quite quick here with the Yam speed. Wooden fortress has been garrisoned in the meantime by the villagers. But remember, it's prioritizing onto those rams to the most. That means that he's not able to strike at the archers, but he has got rid of the spearmen now, and they're even number of archers. So Puppy Paw, in a bit of trouble, will have to back up as Serral continues to snipe him down. Even with the Yam speed, he's made a mistake. He's not microed this correctly. So Puppy Paw going to be forced to engage when he could have just retreated here. The Khan is here now, though, so he'll catch him by surprise with the attack speed arrow. And this will give the edge now to Puppy Paw. I think it's maybe too late, though. He's lost too many troops at this stage. And, well, it looks like Serral's just got the home field advantage as he continues to trickle in more troops. He can back up now. And I don't think they went for the movement speed. They definitely didn't. It's just the Yam so far. So he definitely chose the attack speed. And it just didn't make the difference we were looking for. I think that was a really big slip-up by Puppy Paw. When he retreated away, he kept the Battering Ram and the archers grouped. So when they were retreating, the archers, instead of using the superior 1.44 movement speed, they were moving at the speed of the Battering Ram, which is 0.86. Exactly why Serral was able to pursue him and snipe out several more archers. Puppy Paw, man, you got to step it up. I mean, dog, you definitely getting up there in the ranks. I respect that. You're on the top 30, but like when you're at the top end, when you're playing against this level of gaming, right? Those are the small differences that can win or lose you games. And well, Puppy Paw, where he should have had an advantage off the back of that, ends up coming out maybe a little bit behind, I'd even say, is he's down to 11 archers. And it looks like Puppy Paw is just going to fully back up. And this is problematic, right? Because Puppy Paw, he has finally got the resources together to tech up. But he invested, like, he should have been here sooner, right? He wasted time for this early pressure that just didn't pay off. And as a result, he's going to be forced fully back to his side of the map because he doesn't feel comfortable anymore. He will finally get into that step readout. But now Serral will be ahead of him. He can start to kind of boom up. And Serral needs to be ahead of him because this step readout will allow the Mongol player to gather a lot of gold at a superior rate. And I wonder if with the pressure now relieved, does Serral look to get his hands on a Monk? Because one thing he has 100% been neglecting so far is the gold, right? Like, he played into these hunting cabins on purpose so he could completely ignore getting gold, right? Like, we talked about how certain civs have this element to them that you can utilize. We talked about how, for example, Rus, usually it's the gold through hunting to begin with, but you can transition from hunting cabins, we just don't see it as often. Then when you think of people like HRE, where it's 100% about that castle age timing and gathering the relics, that's super effective for you, right? And Mongols have this booster on the economy for gold specifically with the step readout and castle age. Different civs have these ways of pivoting. One of the amazing things about Rus is they can also ignore gold for the most just because they can have access to Golden Gate, right? So you go from hunting to Golden Gate trade, and it usually gets you all the way to Castle Age, and then you can transition in to relics. But while I am excited to see Serral trying to utilize these hunting cabins, I am disappointed that he's neglecting the relics, which to me is a huge part of exactly why you go for Abbey of the Trinity in the Third Age. More hunting cabins. So it's on the berry lines now as well. Knights scouting out, a few archers moving about. These are still early knights, though. They haven't been upgraded just yet. And I don't know if he's going to bother, actually. With his lack of gold, right? And he's got so few of them in the field. Like, why bother? He is finally moving on to the gold line, but this is so delayed. And this will put him behind, by the way. Like, you can already see on the numbers, like, Puppy Paw is starting to accelerate. When we look at the income per minute, especially, like, 449, with this many people working, the drop-off's being increased by 50%, remember. Puppy Paw could easily look for an imp age rush if he wants to. It might be that he plays hard into Lancers in this age, though. Just tries to leverage an advantage at this stage in the game, which I'm definitely okay with as well. What I'm not so okay with is the fact that Puppy Paw so far is just investing heavily into this cannon foddery type units, right? Like, you've got your spears, you've got your archers. You're both in Castle Age now, right? Respect the fact that your opponent could have a Mangonel or just could have quality type units, right? That can kite you and kill you. And he is starting to do that. And that's something that Puppy Paw now scouts out. Khan moves in and sees the horse archers. And Khan, I think the Khan needs to move quicker than this. We'll be able to get away with the maneuver in the end, but a little bit too close for comfort. Had Serral been paying attention to that, that would have been a dead Khan, 100%. And although they do respawn, keep in mind 2 minutes without the Khan, like, it delays your timings, right? I think people always look and go, ah, big deal, the Khan gets replaced, who cares? I think you should get. Like, being 2 minutes without your Khan is a whole maneuver just prevented, whether it's just getting in quickly with a maneuver arrow specifically or like looking for an engagement with attack speed or defense buffs, right? You're missing out on that in a potential engagement. And good players will identify this. Good players, especially if they have a mobile type army, right? Knights, horse archers, whatever it may be, or they have a forward base. If they snipe out your Khan, they will look to make a move forward. They'll look to gain some ground because they're basically exploiting the fact that they know that you can't actually have that superior buff power in those fights anymore. The horse archers. Fan around the back will be sniped out. I don't think they really got to do any damage to the villager line here either. I mean, Puppy Paw currently at 56. Serral's starting to catch up a bit at 41. So his gap closed a little bit. I think the cap was at least 20 at one point. So it has come down slightly. But still only 1 TC. Never played in the secondary. Now transitioning into the farmlands. So going for that kind of condensed economy that we see so frequently out of Rus players. Rus players, probably out of all the civs I've seen recently, they're the least frequent buyers into the idea of multiple TCs, right? Like, I don't actually see many Rus players building multiple TCs in these games. Mongol players are also down there, actually, surprisingly, in the numbers. I think for Mongols, it's more to do with, like, the rush potential, right? Where you're actually really investing in resources. For Rus players, I think it's because you're playing for that tech rush. But definitely, like, France, England, Delhi. Actually, maybe Delhi less so. Delhi's kind of mid of the pack, but yeah, definitely not too many civs that have been building lots of TCs at the moment. Definitely those are civs fighting as Serral moves in. Yan buff is there, though, so he's going to have to back up as these spearmen are slightly spooky. He's going to lose his knight on the exit. And a lot of his archers are going to die here, so he just needs to get the best value he can with the start stepping. Because remember, you are up against the superior movement speed of the Yam. And you're already outnumbered on the archer count as well. While he does this, though, look what he does. He sneaks into the base. Horse Archer's onto the back line, and he's sniping out quite a few villagers here. He will be forced out in the end, but Serral, nice double pincer move to get value somewhere else. And while it might cost you your archer army, like, you're in the middle of transition, right? You don't actually care as much about these flimsy foot archers anymore. It's all about the horse archery. And that's what he's trying to play into. You can see he's continued to build those up, hasn't switched back at all. So this really was just a cannon fodder army he was willing to lose. And now Puppey down to 51 villages, and Serral catching up now 47. So Serral starting to pull this back, and that's the mobility factor that is really where Puppey is being punished, right? We mentioned that we should be seeing something else, right? We should be seeing some sort of mobility or some quality. Well, guess what, guys? We're finally getting the quality. Puppey now building in the men-at-arms. I wanted to see this much sooner. Transition's at least finally happening. Horse Archers will snipe out one more Villy before being brought down. So they spot out the eco expansion. They know how much is working here for Puppey. And this means that, like, he has to assume that back in the main base, there's not much left. And Puppey, not happy that this information has now been revealed to his opponent. Look how much of his military infrastructure is moving forward. We talked about the weakness of him is the mobility, right? So he's looking to alleviate that issue. One of the beautiful things that Mongols can do is they can relocate the military infrastructure or any infrastructure, right? So where this is going to be super valuable is in this matchup right now, he's building static slow units, right? Even with the YAM speed, you're still talking about infantry that move up to 1.5 max, actually below 1.5, right? Which means against horse archers, you'll never be able to catch them. Because horse archers, remember, 1.62. And same with the knights that are now being produced by Serral. Finally able to actually afford them now that he's on the gold line properly. More horse archers in. He sees the step readout here, and he'll know that he must have just missed them because there's no way a step readout is sitting here not being utilized by a Mongol player. So even if he just parks here, it's kind of worthwhile, actually. Like, you won't be able to snipe the economy directly, but it means the step readout is not working for the Mongol player, which means he's not getting those superior gather rates on the gold right now. And it's very important for Serral to be in that situation, considering Serral is gold capped at this stage. He isn't gathering quick enough to really get any value himself. So one horse archer will be sniped out by the vet archers. Rest of them did leave through the north side of the base, and it looks like the whole economy of Puppey is going to move forward. Smart move, actually. If you move all your military infrastructure up and you get assaulted on the back, you can't just, like, you can't be in a situation where you have to run those troops back. It's just wasting time and allowing your opponent to get to a later timing where you know that Roos is going to be stronger. So just kind of making sure that he moves the economy with the military, always able to protect it. Has gone for Mangonel, by the way. Mangonels did get buffed, remember. I think one of the biggest notable changes would have been that they went from having 180-degree splash damage to 360-degree splash damage, if I'm not mistaken. Which means now that when you catapult in, like, it's not just hitting behind the initial splash point, or hitting a forward initial splash point, rather, it's hitting behind it as well. So Mangonels, basically, I think Mangonels, the problem they had is unless it was a static fight or the enemy was running away, it wasn't very effective. Now they're very effective when your enemy is running towards you. Mangonel shot in. Decent damage done. And the horse archers are pinched here. Serral tried to wrap them around the back, but on both sides he gets caught out. No escape for them, so they're going to be a burnt army. And Puppey Paw, he knows how weak his opponent is. Look at this. He's got the vision from the Khan in the base. He's going to see the knights starting to ride out now. In fact, those knights are going to try and engage on the Khan, but remember, the Khan just way too fast at 1.62, able to always keep away from the knights. But the knights, they locked into charge this whole time. They actually would have been able to catch up there if he committed to the charge still. You saw it at 1.94 movement speed. Kind of weird with the charge, the way it sometimes engages, sometimes doesn't. Sometimes it requires a specific range. Sometimes it's willing to just go as soon as you're attacked. But that does mean that Puppey Paw knows what Serral's doing. Let's see if Serral actually switches this up as a result of that. Because otherwise, you know you're running into a counter of some kind, right? You have to be. And in fact, look at the amount of siege weapons coming up. So a second Mangonel committed by Puppey Paw, as well as building into the traction trebuchet now. And now he's getting the Springwood army up. And this is exactly where Serral is lacking right now. And this is concerning, right? The reason he doesn't have these siege weapons, by the way, is because he's playing a dynamic force, right? He's looking to be very mobile and just exploit the fact that his opponent can't do the same. Problem with that strategy is, while it's great when your opponent is on the defensive in his own base, whatever, when your opponent is slowly making his way towards your base, it becomes super ineffective. And we're about to see how ineffective it can be. Now, there is a weakness to Puppey's composition right now. He does not have enough spearmen. He has, of course, started to transition into the man-at-arms and has brought out the crossbowmen. So the crossbowmen will deal very well with the knights. Remember, the damage that they get against these armor units did get buffs. They do more damage now to the heavy units. You can see it's +9 at this stage. So expect these knights to be melted through pretty quick. And I don't know if he got Boy's Fortitude. Boy's Fortitude, of course, did get moved over here. No, he never got Boy's Fortitude, so he's not getting that extra 20 health on his cavalry, which would have been pretty valuable considering his composition. And Serral definitely feeling limited again. He's trying to churn out as many units as possible, but this just doesn't feel like a substantial army for the amount you've spent right now. He at least has the wooden fortresses down, so he's somewhat defended, but it's not going to be for long. 3 Mangonels moving in. Good lord. These buildings are not going to last long. Baron Ram moving across as well. He's got the Treb. Starting to work on that wooden fortress. And Serral, it's going to be Scorched Earth policy. He has to buy as much time as possible. He needs more troops. He's building into the Spirals now, but this is a reactionary move. He has got 2 siege workshops down, yes, but can he actually get a big enough force quick enough to overwhelm the 5 Spirals that Puppy Paw has? Especially when your siege workshops are on the front line. Archers. Oh no, the damage! The Mangonel sniped them out. The Spirals as well. The Archer army is gone. Wooden Fortress is going to fall soon. More Spirals being built up. Puppy Paw, he can see that he's stepping on Serral's throat and he refuses to let up. Doesn't want the beast to bite back. Moving in now. Baton Rams onto that siege workshop line. 2 Spirals came out, but that's not going to be good enough. There's just too many Spirals here right now. Remember, Puppy Paw, he can build these out in the field. He is a Mongol player after all. And more troops coming in, more Spirals, more everything. The villager line is moving up as well. They're looking to maybe create more infrastructure to exploit this situation. Baton Ram in on this. Khan has been taken out, but I don't think you really need him at this stage. The Mangonels, they'll push everything further back. It's becoming problematic right now for Serral. There's only so much of your base you can give up before you're going to be forced to fight here. And we're reaching that critical point. It's going to come out the charge now. Composition force of cavalry charging in, but remember the crossbowmen are here to counter out these knights and these horsemen. Horsemen not as tanky as they once were. The Mangonels sniping out. One low play. At the back is going to force the knights away. No! Serral, he tried for the 2-pincher. It's not going to be good enough, though. He's going to be wiped on both fronts. And with that, Puppy Paw looks like he has completely stomped his opponent out, as Serral will call the GG.